Welcome back to the channel. Sorry if sound and video is not exactly its normal high quality, but I'm making this video because I'm really angry, and it's about the quality of car parts, and it's a specific warning about this one car part I'm going to mention, but it actually applies to the whole car industry, the whole aftermarket car industry. We've got serious issues going on. And it's really quite worrying, and it's about car parts that are not made by the OEM manufacturer anymore. So I'm in this Land Rover Range Rover Sport. It's an L320. It's got the 2.7 TDV6 in it, and I've just it's got a very common problem with it. I fitted a new brake servo, and I thought, whilst I'm there, I'm going to change the master cylinder, do the pair. So I got a genuine TRW master cylinder and servo. Now, the original Land Rover parts from the factory are TRW. They were TRW, the car's not made anymore, obviously. So I got TRW parts, and I've treble checked the part numbers. I've got the right part numbers. And these are from a reputable supplier. They're definitely genuine TRW. They're not some sort of fake ones or anything like that. And this is the part that I've actually got. It's a PMF 457. And this is a faulty part. I'm just going to show you it here. It's very nicely made. It says TRW on it. But this is not actually a genuine TRW part. Now, the servo I fitted is a genuine TRW part. That is to say, it's made on the same production line using the same tooling as the part that was fitted to the car. So generally, with a part, a car part, there will be the part that's made for the car when it was new, and we call that a genuine part, and that's the same part that you get from the dealer when you go to their spares department. So it's made on a production line, and generally car parts are not made by car manufacturers. So Land Rover don't make very many parts themselves. They do make some parts themselves, but not very many. Even the engines and gearboxes and stuff aren't made by Land Rover. Now, to be fair to Land Rover, they are bringing quite a lot of stuff back in house. So say these seats, they'll be made by Land Rover, but stuff like braking components, even on something like a Tesla, are not made by the car manufacturer. In this case, they're made by TRW. And the old part said on it here, in the casting, TRW. This one doesn't. It's laser etched. So this is not made on the same production line. And the box is quite honest about that. It says made in China. Nothing wrong with parts made in China. In fact, I bought a car, a Volvo, that's entirely made in China. I've got nothing against China at all. But something has got lost in translation, because this part is too long. It's 3mm too long. And you might ask, well, is that really a problem? Well, it is. It's caused me massive problems, because I've compared it to the old one, and it's 3mm different. Here, this is 3mm longer, and the way a master cylinder works is that there's a port that allows brake fluid into the cylinder, and this gets covered the moment you press on the brake, because obviously if the brake fluid could just go back into the reservoir when you press on the pedal, it wouldn't be much of a master cylinder. It wouldn't make any pressure. But as soon as you start pressing on the pedal, it pushes this plunger in and it covers these ports up. The problem is, because this is 3mm too long, it's the moment you bolt it down, or screw the nuts down rather, it's actually covering that port. Now, I bled it with a pressure bleeder. It bled up fine. Drove the car down the road. It drove fine. The ABS worked. The pedal felt lovely. Everything was very happy. Until I thought, well, I want to test the emergency brake. And on these cars, you can activate the emergency brake by pulling on the parking brake lever. Did that, and it didn't stop. In fact, it used the parking brake to stop. So on all cars with electric handbrake, if you pull on the switch, it will actually activate the hydraulic brakes. But it didn't do that. It stopped using the parking brake, which is like an emergency backup mode. And it only does that if there's a hydraulic problem. And then the pedal went really hard and I barely got it back to the workshop. So, that's weird. And I realised I could look on my diagnostics machine at brake pressure, and I had a look at that, and it was holding brake pressure. When I undid the unions, that brake pressure went away. So undid the unions, it drove normally, I pulled the handbrake lever, and I thought, well, maybe the ABS pump is faulty. But it didn't do this when I brought the car in, because I actually tested that before I brought the car in. It's just that the brake servo wasn't working. So I realised that it was holding the pressure on because I undid the nuts. As I undid the nuts, the pressure bled off on my computer, and I could see that that had fixed the issue. So clearly what's happened is this is a very well made part. It's beautifully made, looks absolutely fantastic. But it's not made by TRW, it's made by a factory in China, and they have laser engraved TRW into it. And you see that a lot with these Chinese parts, that a Western company, in this case TRW, will go to China and they'll say, well, we need some master cylinders, and they'll go to what is probably a very good world-class factory, in fact, I would say, and they make this. But someone has put the wrong dimension in the CAD file. It's 3mm out. Someone's done that wrong. And it's so frustrating because I've rung TRW and they basically they pretended like they were interested, but I don't think they were actually that interested in sorting this. Nobody at TRW, I don't think, has actually tested this in a car. They haven't actually put this in the car and tested it. They haven't compared it to the old part that they were making in their actual TRW factory. It's so frustrating because if I send this back to my supplier, they'll sell it to somebody else, and it's dangerous. So I'm making this YouTube video as a kind of warning, and just explanation what the problem is. And that's the issue, that these big firms are probably not able to make. The factory that probably made these for Land Rover has probably closed down. It's probably a Tesco or something now. So they can't. They've had to buy them in from elsewhere, and it's just not been done right. It's not a problem with Chinese manufacturing. It's really a problem with Western companies just saying, oh, well, there it is, get on and do it. And the Chinese factory kind of self-certifying that it's going to be all right. And unfortunately, it's not. Nobody has tested this on a vehicle. They haven't gone out and put it on and gone, does this work? They've just gone, yeah, that looks right. And it's not. You put them side by side. This one, you can see, is 3mm too long. If you measure it, it's 3mm too long. And it's not just TRW. I had a problem with a Pierberg EGR valve. Always used to fit Pierberg EGR valves on the VW diesels. They're right around the back. They're a horrible job to do. Fitted one and it was faulty out of the box. And it was definitely the fault of the part. It was faulty out the box. Proved it. I took it to bits and I could see that the motor was too stiff. The motor couldn't overcome its own internal friction. It'd been made wrong. And Pierberg used to be the most expensive EGR valves, but again, it was made in China. And I'm not blaming the Chinese, and I'm not really blaming Pierberg, but nobody is getting these parts and actually testing them. We've had massive problems since COVID with supply chains, and what seems to be happening is that the factories are probably tooled up to make parts for new cars that are going wrong all the time. So the Chinese are having to step in, and it's just leading to this situation where the quality of the parts, it doesn't actually matter these days what it says on the box. The parts are all the same inside. I can guarantee you that that part will be sold under another brand. Had it again with brake calipers the other day. We've got some no-name ones off eBay, and we've got some branded ones, Western branded ones, and they're the same part. You can see they're exactly the same. They have the same like casting marks in them. but they were laser engraved differently. So obviously the firm that made the casting for this didn't want to put TRW in the casting, because then if they sold it to somebody else, then they couldn't sell it as a whatever that was. What used to happen is that they'd grind it off. But so yeah, it's a warning, don't buy any of these. And please, if you're watching from TRW, this is, you've got to test the product on the car. You've got to actually like take it back into the engineering department that designed it originally and compare it against, tear it down, tear down random samples even, because the quality, maybe the first one they get at the factory is really good, but something's got to happen. And I could only work out what this was because I really thoroughly tested the car. I went above and beyond testing, and then came across this problem with the brakes locking on. This could have gone out to the customer, and then as the brakes wore, then it wouldn't have been letting brake fluid in, and the brakes would have failed. So, or, you know, something bad would have happened. So I will be sending this back, but I'll be marking it and putting pictures and maybe even a link to this video in the box. Stuff like this is really, really worrying. And it's a big problem because you just can't seem to get good quality stuff. And actually you're almost better off just buying the cheapest one on eBay these days, and it's probably going to be the same quality as the one in the fancy box. Essentially, a lot of these big companies now are just making boxes. Really, that's what they're doing. A big box company making very shiny boxes, which is just so depressing. I mean, even Bosch starter motors now are made in China, and I'm sorry, they're not the same quality as the ones that you could get that were made in Ukraine. There used to be Bosch starter motors were made in Ukraine, and they were a genuine Bosch starter motor with genuine Bosch spare parts. You buy one now, obviously I've realised there was a war and stuff. It is a war, but they're not the same. They've got different nuts. The quality is just obviously different. I'm not saying they're a bad part. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy TRW. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy Bosch starter motors, but they're not the same part as was fitted to the vehicle from the factory. And it always used to be the case that if if a part said TRW on it, it was just basically the genuine part in a different box. And now it's quite the opposite. It's not the genuine part in the same box, which is just so depressing. So yep, that's my rant. Sorry about the video and audio. Didn't think I was going to be making a video today, but I had to just get it off my chest, and I've sort of proven it, and it just makes me feel good about myself, because I do not want someone else fitting this part to their Land Rover and having brake failure. And I want TRW to take this really seriously, because it's fine. I have no problem with people making stuff in China, but it's got to be tested. It's got to, because that factory, they've never seen a Land Rover. You know, that factory that make them, they've never seen a Land Rover. They've just got a CAD file. You know, got some engineering drawings, and someone has, someone set the machine up wrong, or the file up wrong, or whatever. It's exactly 3 mil out. You know, it's like accurately 3 mil out. It's a bit like that thing with the Hubble Space Telescope, where they ground the mirror wrong in the Hubble Space Telescope, precisely wrong. Something like that's happened. But you know, that quality just isn't there, because in the olden days that would have been made in on the same line as the genuine part. So they would have, we would have gone into production in 2005 or whenever these cars came in. 2004, and it would have just kept going, and then when they stopped making them for Land Rover, they would have made them for themselves and put them in their own box and just ground off the Land Rover logo if there was one. Which is what they've done with the servo. The servo is the genuine part. It's made in Poland. So it's really, really disappointing. But thanks for watching.